Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the topic of universal health care, because everyone wants to talk about it. I'm not going to get as political here as I do on my Firearm and Politics channel. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I think this is important. This is a major discussion in the world today, in most countries, including my own. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And I'm going to talk about this as someone who has lived as an adult taxpayer for many, many years, who's had various types of medical coverage in the United States, as well as someone who's lived in the UK in a system of socialized medicine. So I'm not some young kid with ideas and ideals about this that aren't realistic. I've experienced all these things myself. And what I believe is the case is that you have to find ways, if we're going to have this sort of system, so that the system doesn't get as bogged down and unfair and create a disproportionate burden on people who choose to live healthy lifestyles and therefore are statistically unlikely to need as much health care, to be unfair to them. It really is unfair to punish people for making the right choices, make them pay just as much money into a system as people who choose to abuse their bodies and be alcoholics and obese and sedentary. All right, because those are conscious choices. That is one of the biggest criticisms leveled against any sort of socialized medicine. And anyone who's been in a country who has it understands that they do pay more taxes. And people will say, well, you know, you have all these problems where you live. That's true, but we pay a hell of a lot less taxes. It's not just a small amount difference here. Like Texas, you have some of the lowest taxes anyone probably has seen in the world. Almost anyone in a Western country would be shocked at what we pay in taxes here in comparison. And most of us still have medical coverage. There's the big difference. But if we're going to go in the direction of socialized medicine, and while I'm not a fan of it, I'm going to say that if you do that, or in the countries that already have it, you really need incentives in place to make people healthy, to get people to go to the gym, to get people to eat better. And so how do you do that? I'm not a big fan of government punishing people for their lifestyles. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about if everyone's going to pay a given amount of taxes towards a system, how do you remove burden on that system? You need more people to be healthy. As human beings, what's the number one motivation for us in modern countries where people work for a living, or even if they're on welfare of any type? The number one reward generally for us that government can provide would be financial incentives. So what I'm talking about is giving people tax credits and tax breaks. Meaning, how do you get people to lift weights? How do you get people to eat more vegetables? You have a system in place to where they give proof that they do these things in order to get a reduced tax rate. So people who choose to be less of a burden to that system that is going to tax people a lot should be rewarded for it. And people will say, oh man, that sounds like Big Brother stuff. They're going to track everything. They already track everything with your taxes, guys. I mean, when you do stuff for taxes, you can do a lot of things that you turn in to reduce your taxes. It's a conscious choice. All right, I file a very complicated tax return, personally, so that I can get the most deductions possible. It requires a lot of bookkeeping. And yeah, if they so choose, they will come check on that and check every single receipt that I have. The government has the option to do that, and that's reality. If you want less taxes, you're going to have to open up your books, basically. That's just reality. It's a real world, guys. Deal with it. It's not Big Brother monitoring everything, and they do that anyways, whether you want them to or not. So, what do I mean by that? Well, people who have gym memberships, we could reward them by proving that they go to the gym 3 times a week. Meaning if they go, because you go to a gym, you scan in today. Every gym you go to today has a scan-in system. They have a system in place to log how often you go to the gym. People who could prove that they go to a gym regularly would get tax credit. They would get tax reductions. That one's in question. They will get tax reductions, and I think that's reasonable. People say, well, what about people who have home gyms? Give proof that you use your stuff. Proof that you use your stuff. You bought it somewhere. If someone bought a whole power rack and a couple of stationary bikes and all this stuff in their home, you paid for it somehow. You probably have receipts for it. It wouldn't be that hard to devise a system to show that you utilize those things. If a person has so much certain amounts of training equipment at home, then give them the tax break. People who can prove that they're doing cardio, give them tax credits for people who buy exercise-specific items. All right, exercise-specific items. You can either do it as a credit system, you could do it as a tax deduction system, but the point is reward people. If you're going to go into a socialized medicine system, reward people for their good behavior. And I think most people out here listening can get behind this. You're probably going, I mean, if you guys work, you pay taxes, or you're going to one day, a lot of you are students. I'm sure you want to pay less taxes and you want to be rewarded for your good behavior, meaning if you diet and exercise correctly and take care of your body, I'm sure most of you out there are like, hey, I like the rewards I already get for it, but if I could get an extra financial incentive for doing so, hell yeah. And that's how we create a healthier country and a healthier society. Reward people directly for their good behavior. And I'm not saying some people wouldn't cheat the system, but you know what? People cheat the system all the time. You can't say I'm not going to do something good because I'm afraid some people are going to just go to a gym and sit down and check in 3 times a week for 30 minutes and not do any exercise or anything. Okay, some of them might do that. But here's the thing, the ones that are going to do that are people with a lot of free time who probably don't make much money. It's not going to be that big of a tax break. It's not going to be a big burden to the system, and most of them aren't going to do that. And you know what, eventually some of them might get up and go do things. And you know what, there could be a system in place to where the gyms watch for that. Someone who never ever exercises and checks in for the tax credit, they could report that for tax fraud. That does happen. But you can't say, oh, I'm not going to give rewards because people might abuse the system. Well, you know what? Yeah, people are going to abuse systems, but it's still going to push people in the right direction. Same thing. People might buy all this home equipment and then never use it. Well, they might. But how about if they buy the home equipment, they have to provide a couple photographs, time-stamped or whatever, for year of the equipment, showing that it has been in use. Showing that it's not just being used to throw towels on and covered in dust. Again, it creates an extra situation. And eventually some of those people might go, well, you know, I was going to cheat the system, but I've got all this equipment, I have to keep it uncovered, I have to make space for it in my home, I might as well use it. You would probably see a lot of that. So, as much as people say, well, people might cheat on it, they might, but the majority aren't, because most people who have all this stuff already want to exercise. Reward them for their behavior. Give them lower premiums on stuff. Give them tax credits to prove it. And you know what? You can do the same thing with their physicals. And you can do the same thing with their groceries, meaning people who go in, if they can prove based upon their grocery receipts, most people have store cards, they don't just all buy cash, most people log it in a system. You know what you buy. If people can show that they're buying X amount of vegetables or fruits or whole foods, you looked at there and said, hey man, they bought whole wheat bread or whole wheat pasta every single time they went to the store. Man, they bought that stuff every week. They bought fresh vegetables every single week. You put a credit system in place to where if people buy a certain amount relative to their house size of healthy foods and they're actually on their list, they're making an effort to eat healthy. They're making an effort to get more fiber, more vitamins, minerals, things like that. If you can see it reflected in their grocery bill through a simple point system, they're probably going to be healthier. They should qualify for a tax credit on that. Same thing with your physicals. You go in for a physical once a year, you can get bonus points and a tax deduction if everything comes back. You reach certain health markers, which means you're probably taking care of yourself. Tax break for those people. Reward people's good behavior. This is how we create a fitter nation and a fitter society. And people don't have to be hardcore. People are like, oh, they're going to go to the gym and goof off. You know what? Someone who goes to the gym and goof off and plays on the machines or only does cardio or whatever, and oh, they only buy some broccoli a couple times a week. you do realize they're going to be healthier than the average person who's not eating vegetables, who's not eating whole grains, who doesn't do any exercise at all. They're still going to be better. They're still going to be less of a burden into any sort of socialized medicine system. They're going to be less of a burden on everyone else. They will be less of a burden. And this is how you take a system like that and you make it more fair. This is how we can use tax credits. Not punishing people, but directly rewarding people by not making them pay as much money into a system because they're choosing to lead a lifestyle that doesn't burden that system as much. This is how you have government promote fitness. I mean, people want fitness incentives. This is how you get fitness incentives in a society. You make people not have to pay as much taxes, not pay as high of premiums on insurance, things like that, if they can prove that they're healthy and have a fit lifestyle. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.